Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, was no stranger to the spotlight. Having become a prominent figure in politics and global affairs, his words and actions had been dissected and analyzed by millions. Known for his bold statements, strong opinions, and larger-than-life personality, Trump had always been at the center of controversy, praise, and criticism alike. However, there was more to Donald Trump than the political figure that the public often saw. As the father of 5 children, including his youngest, Barron Trump, he also carried the role of a parent. Faith had always played a significant part in his life, though it wasn't often discussed publicly in the same way as his business ventures or political decisions. Faith had been instilled in him from an early age, growing up in a family that valued religious traditions and beliefs. For Trump, faith was something deeply personal, a source of strength and guidance that had seen him through both his triumphs and his challenges. Despite the spotlight that constantly hovered over him, he had always believed in the importance of faith, family, and belief in something greater than oneself. On this particular day, Donald Trump was seated at a special children's event where he was invited to speak and engage with a group of young minds. The event was not about politics or policies. It was about hope, education, and inspiration. Children from all walks of life filled the seats, excited to hear from the president and ask him questions that they had been eager to know the answers to. One small girl, around 8 years old, stood up with a microphone in hand, her wide brown eyes full of curiosity. She wore a soft pink dress and had a warm smile that melted even the sternest expressions in the room. Her name was Lily, and unlike many others in the crowd who had questions about school, science, or the future of the country, Lily asked something much deeper. "Mr. Trump, I have a question about faith. What does faith mean to you?" The room seemed to fall silent. It wasn't just a political question, it was a personal one. Faith, something that transcends policies, opinions, and even fame, was not a topic that many expected to hear from a sitting president. It was a question that could open up a conversation that was far more profound than any policy debate. For a brief moment, Donald Trump's expression softened. He had spoken to crowds before, had answered tough questions in interviews, and had debated countless issues in front of millions. But this question, this simple, pure question from a little girl, caught him off guard. As the lights dimmed slightly and the audience awaited his response, Trump took a moment to gather his thoughts. His usual confidence remained, but this time he was speaking from a place of personal reflection rather than political necessity. "That's a very important question, Lily. Faith is something that has always been a big part of my life. It's what helps guide me in times of uncertainty, what gives me the strength to keep going, and what reminds me of what's truly important: family, love, and doing what's right." Lily listened intently, her bright eyes never leaving his face. The other children in the audience, too, were quiet, hanging on his words. Trump continued, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "Faith means believing in something bigger than yourself. It's about believing that no matter how tough things get, you can always rise above it. And it's about trust, trusting in yourself, your family, and those around you. Faith has carried me through tough moments, and I believe it can carry you through yours." As Trump spoke, the room was silent, and Lily's gaze grew even more focused, as though she were soaking up every word. She hadn't expected a political answer, nor did she want one. What she wanted was the truth, a simple, heartfelt response that made her understand the importance of faith, not just as a concept, but as a guiding force in life. The crowd felt the sincerity in Trump's words. For the first time that evening, the audience wasn't just hearing a political figure speak. They were hearing the man behind the position, a father, a leader, and someone who knew that faith could be a source of strength. Lily smiled, her innocence and pure understanding shining through as she responded with grace. "I pray for my family every day, Mr. Trump, and I try to do good things for others. I believe in faith too. Trump, his eyes warm with appreciation, smiled back at her. You've got it, Lily. Faith is about love and doing what's right. Keep that in your heart, and you'll always be guided. The audience, moved by the exchange, gave a soft round of applause. But it wasn't the applause that was important. It was the connection that had been made, one that transcended the usual political discourse and reminded everyone of the deeper values that could guide a life. The response from Donald Trump to Lily's question about faith resonated deeply within the room. The words he had shared weren't just for Lily, they had an impact on everyone who had listened. The room had been filled with children, their faces glowing with wonder and understanding as they processed his message. It was clear that, for many, this was not a typical exchange at a political event. The usual discussions about policy, economy, and governance had taken a back seat to something more personal, more human. The audience, many of whom had gathered for a different kind of show, began to reflect on what had just transpired. A simple question from a young girl about faith had become a powerful reminder that, regardless of position or title, everyone needs faith to guide them through life. The strength to face difficulties, to rise above challenges, and to find meaning in times of hardship, all of this came from something deeper than politics. For Lily, this moment would stay with her for the rest of her life. The answer she had received wasn't just a political soundbite, it was a heartfelt message that would guide her as she grew older. She had seen the former president, a man who had lived through incredible public scrutiny and global pressure, openly admit that faith had been his source of strength. That honesty, the vulnerability of someone in such a high office admitting that faith had grounded them, was something she would carry with her forever. After the event, news outlets began to pick up the story. It wasn't about the usual political debates or his policy positions. Instead, the media focused on the exchange between Trump and Lily, the heartfelt conversation about faith. The story went viral, shared by people from all walks of life. News platforms, social media influencers, and even regular citizens took to platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to share the story. As the story spread, people from across the nation began to comment on how rare it was to see such a genuine moment from a public figure, especially one like Donald Trump, who was often seen as larger than life and disconnected from ordinary people. For many, this was a refreshing moment of clarity that cut through the usual noise of politics. It wasn't about the Trump name, it was about the message of faith that transcended politics, one that many found deeply relatable. Politicians, pundits, and even celebrities began to weigh in, praising Trump for his authenticity. Some conservative figures saw it as a moment where Trump had connected with the nation on a personal level, a side of him that many had not seen before. Others, particularly from the liberal side, found the honesty in his response refreshing, albeit surprising. Faith, after all, wasn't a political issue. It was a human issue, and here was a man who, despite his divisiveness, showed that even those at the top of the political ladder struggled with and found comfort in believing. But not all reactions were positive. As is the case with political figures, there was also criticism. Some skeptics pointed out the timing of the event, questioning whether Trump's response was truly sincere or part of a calculated attempt to improve his image. Critics of Trump, whether they were journalists or social media users, argued that this moment was a fleeting attempt to humanize him, something that had not been achieved through his policies or public actions. Despite the criticisms, Barron Trump, who had been watching from the sidelines as his father engaged with the audience, felt a sense of pride. This wasn't about the Trump legacy or the political capital that could be gained. It was about the genuine moment his father had shared with a little girl and, in turn, the millions of people who had witnessed the exchange. For Barron, it had been a glimpse into the power of a simple message, a message of faith, hope, and love. The day after the event, Lily's parents received messages from all over, with people commenting on how their daughter had been the catalyst for one of the most sincere conversations the world had seen in recent months. For them, it was a moment that had shown them that sometimes the simplest questions were the ones that could spark the deepest changes. Lily's mother shared a video of the event on her social media, and within hours, the post was being shared by people from across the world. Messages of gratitude and support flooded in, with many commenting on how Lily's question had touched them deeply. Some mentioned how it reminded them to reconnect with their own faith and how, in a world of chaos, it was easy to forget the simple, powerful values that could make a difference. Lily herself, however, didn't think much about the attention. She had only asked the question because she had genuinely wondered about faith, a topic she had been raised to care about deeply. To her, it wasn't about the media attention or the praise. It was about getting an answer from someone she respected, someone who had a different perspective on life than she did. She had learned something from the encounter, something about the importance of believing, no matter the circumstances. For Trump, the ripple effects were more subtle. While the media storm had passed, he felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He hadn't been expected to discuss faith, yet when the question came, he had found the right words, not just for Lily, but for anyone listening. In that brief moment, he had been reminded that faith wasn't just something for private moments. It was something that could connect people from all walks of life. It wasn't about policy or political parties. It was about the values that bind us all together as human beings. As the days passed, the story of Lily's question and Donald Trump's heartfelt answer continued to echo across the country. The event had been a defining moment not just for the people who were there, but for everyone who heard about it. It wasn't just a moment about politics or public figures. It was a moment about humanity, about how one simple question from a young girl could bring to light the importance of faith, hope, and love in a world that often seemed divided. For Donald Trump, the experience had been a wake-up call. While his time in the White House had been filled with contentious debates, challenges, and intense media scrutiny, this moment gave him a chance to speak from the heart. It reminded him that the political world could sometimes be noisy and divisive, but at its core, what really mattered was connection. In answering Lily's question about faith, Trump had not just spoken to her, but to millions of others who needed to hear that simple message. Though the media had moved on to its next headline, the ripple effect of that conversation continued. Across the country, families gathered around dinner tables and churches, discussing the importance of faith and how it shapes their lives. It wasn't just a story about a former president. It was a story about the universal need for hope, for love, and for belief, whether that belief was in God, in oneself, or in the goodness of others. As the conversation spread, people began to reflect on their own relationship with faith. Parents shared the story with their children, using it as an example of how simple acts of kindness and love could change lives. Social media posts, articles, and even television segments began exploring the deeper meaning of Trump's words. Many were surprised to see a side of him they had not expected, a side that was vulnerable, thoughtful, and deeply rooted in personal belief. For Lily, this moment had changed her as well. The young girl who had simply asked a question about faith had unknowingly sparked a larger conversation about humanity. She had learned that even the most powerful figures could be moved by faith, and she had inspired others to reconnect with their own beliefs. It wasn't just about the answer she received, it was about the impact of that answer. Her question had not only been answered but had also led to change, spreading a message of hope far beyond that room. Lily's parents, who had initially been nervous about their daughter asking a question in front of so many people, were overwhelmed with gratitude. The day after the event, Their inboxes were filled with messages of appreciation. Some shared how Lily's question had helped them reconnect with their faith. Others spoke of how the story had inspired them to act with more kindness in their own lives. As Lily and her family walked through the streets of their hometown, the people who recognized them often stopped to express their thanks. Strangers congratulated Lily for her bravery, some even telling her that her question had touched them deeply. What started as a small moment, a question in a crowd, had blossomed into a national conversation about what really mattered in life. Meanwhile, Baron Trump, watching from the sidelines, had begun to reflect more deeply on the event and its lasting impact. Though he had been a witness to his father's public life for years, seeing his father answer that simple question with such sincerity had caused him to look at faith and connection in a new way. It wasn't about the fame, the politics, or the power. It was about the ability to touch lives, to make a difference with authenticity. Baron had always been more reserved, but he found a sense of pride in the way his father had handled the moment. It reminded him that, no matter the political divides or the noise of the world, there was always room for love and compassion. The impact of that conversation wasn't just felt in the immediate aftermath. It continued to resonate over time. The simple, heartfelt message about faith had left an imprint that couldn't be erased. The hope that Trump had shared with Lily and the world became a symbol for many, reminding them that there was more to life than politics and that sometimes the most important questions were those that came from a place of pure innocence.